everyone, and welcome to today's DataVox webinar, Cybersecurity for the Distributed Workforce, via the Fish and Food Cisco series, presented by Cisco. My name is Jessica, and I will be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this webinar through Cisco WebEx events, and the audio can be heard through your PC or by calling into the phone number listed and with the access code provided in your confirmation email or calendar invite for this event. Today's webinar is being recorded on behalf of DataVox, and participation in this event indicates your consent to being included in that recording. All attendees will receive an email with the link to the completed recording 24 to 48 hours post-event. If you have any questions for the presenters at any time during this presentation, you may submit those questions via the Q&A feature to the bottom right of your screen. This should already be turned on. Simply click Q&A and the text box will appear. Our panel will be responding to these questions throughout the presentation via text and will respond verbally at the conclusion of the presentation. If you are in need of support or have a question not pertaining to today's topic, please utilize the chat feature and I will be happy to assist you. This feature is separate from the Q&A feature and can be turned on by clicking the chat bubble in the lower center of your screen. Now that we have reviewed the features of this webinar, we would like to start off today's presentation with a few words from our Cybersecurity Solutions Architect at DataVox, Paul Yao. Paul, the floor is yours.
All right. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Paul Yao from DataVox. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for taking their time today to join us for our Fish and Food webinar in partnership with Cisco. So as things have changed a lot in the last few months, we're all adapting to the situations by working remotely, continuing to drive business forward during these difficult times. Unfortunately, so are the cyber criminals. And in the last 2 days, in the past 2 days, I would say April 11 to 13, the experts have actually analyzed about 310,000 phishing emails that actually contain corona or COVID-19 in the subject line in an attempt to steal user credentials. And also from January 2020 to April 14, which is yesterday, they've also analyzed and actually have detected that approximately 17 U.S. school districts and colleges have actually been hit by ransomware. So as we all can see that as critical it is to drive business forward or to maintain the business flow, proper security posture is also as important. So DataVox offers a variety of multi-layer security solutions, and we can also provide evaluations and tests by utilizing Cisco Proof of Value offerings that can immediately enhance security posture, manageability, and also visibility. So let me introduce our cybersecurity expert from Cisco, Lindy Xu, who can tell us more about how to provide your company a safe journey, both during and after this pandemic situation. So Lindy, it's all yours.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul. So for the sake of trying to save some bandwidth, I will end up turning off my video once I actually start sharing my screen here. But in the end, I will turn my video back on just so you guys know. But let me share my screen, and we can go ahead and get started here. Perfect. Awesome. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out to our Fish and Food webinar series. Again, my name is Lindy Shea. I'm part of Cisco Systems. I'm a technical solution specialist covering our cloud security products. So I also do have colleagues that will be monitoring the Q&A chat, so please submit any type of questions there, but we will also try to save some time at the end to answer any of those questions live. So I do know that this is supposed to be an in-person session and obviously with food. However, with everything that's going on right now, we do want to have everyone to stay safe and healthy. So if you guys hang on to the end of the session, we will have a QR code for you to submit a quick survey letting us know how we did, how we can improve, and we will be sending out a $50 gift card. So with that, let's continue. So really, as part of Cisco's visions of changing the way we work, live, play, and learn, we're really emphasizing the work and learn part of our statement. With our lives changing based off of current events with COVID-19, Cisco has aligned free WebEx offers for schools and corporations, along with our security offerings for endpoint protection with our for endpoints, DNS protection with Cisco Umbrella, Multifactor Authentication with Duo, and then as well as our AnyConnect VPN for secure access for internal documentation and applications. We're also expanding our capacities for existing customers and longer trial license periods. So if you guys are interested in this, just either reach out to your Cisco account team or obviously to your DataVox team members as well. We'd be more than happy to getting you more details on that and getting that started for you. So when it comes to protecting against phishing attacks or just protecting your users' data and networks, I know that there's a lot of solutions out there that can potentially help solve this problem for you. As you can see, there's lots of options out there. However, looking at point products and solutions that cannot share information can actually induce more problems than good. So just really kind of thinking about this, how much time does it take for you and your team to investigate an incident, remediate it, as well as providing information about what exactly happened? Right? This may take some time for you to flip between dashboards, making sure that the security information found in one solution is being replicated in something else in the rest of your security portfolio. So really, a solution is only as good as the intel it shares, and also how quickly your team can remediate the issue and provide answers about that particular incident. So this is really where Cisco Security has a complete end-to-end visibility from your networks to your endpoints to your application, even to the cloud. But to kind of circle back to my statement, a solution is only as good as the intel it shares, but it also needs to be able to dynamically share that data found from one platform to the next, right? So this is really where our Talos team is crucial to the Cisco Security solution, as it feeds all of the intelligence to our security products. So just kind of a bit about our Talos team. They're a group of engineers that is constantly scrounging the webs for the next malware, phishing, exploit, anything that could be detrimental to not just your network, but any of our security customers out there. Because all of our security products, they all feed back into our Talos. Therefore, if we find a threat, whether it be on our firewall, whether it be from our email security solution, that information is automatically going to get updated to the rest of our security portfolio. So that way, if we see something then associated with it, maybe a domain, that will automatically be blocked. This allows us to be able to better protect our end users because you really cannot protect what you can't see. So to kind of give you some numbers on Talos, Talos actually sees 2.2 trillion artifacts daily. So some of that consists of 1.9 trillion email artifacts, 200 billion DNS request entries a day, 47 billion web requests, also net flows, new detection events, artifacts, as well as authentication and file artifacts. So today we're really going to be focusing on a few of these solutions pertaining more to protect you against phishing attacks. But I did want to also just kind of show you where we do have a wide array of our security platform. So the top 3 ways attackers try to get into your network is first by web attacks, right? And we can actually prevent this through Cisco Umbrella being your first line of defense and protecting your users from attackers who prowl the web. Another way is actually through email. Email is still the #1 attack vector, and we can actually prevent this with our Cisco email security and our advanced phishing protection. And then lastly is by your endpoints, right? So with our AMP for Endpoints Protection, we can actually stop malicious files from executing on your devices, as well as also setting up multi-factor authentication with Duo to ensuring that that user is who they say they are. So as you guys have probably noticed or even possibly received a few of these events yourself, even with the pandemic at hand, this is not going to stop malicious users. So with COVID-19, as Paul mentioned earlier, we're actually seeing a dramatic rise in phishing attacks as a sudden move to remote workforces that aren't used to teleworking. So they may not actually have all the security in place to protect these users and devices. Many of the COVID-19 phishing scams are actually utilizing the same underlying tactics, techniques, and procedures that we've observed all along and have been continuing educating consumers through our Cisco Talos blogs, our podcasts, and our other outreach programs. Think of this as they're taking something old and just giving it a facelift, right? So here's going to be a few examples how we're going to describe the framework for detecting and mitigating these types of attacks. So first one, as I mentioned earlier, email being that #1 attack vector. Who here actually looks at the email addresses versus the name itself when they receive an email, especially, let's say, from your iPhone, right? This here actually describes a kind of attack called display name spoofing. This is probably the simplest, almost crude opportunity type of attack for attackers to execute, as this is still effective. Because most of us, again, we're really only checking our emails, whether it be on our mobile devices or some type of smaller screen, but we're really only looking at the sender name, right? We're not actually looking at the email addresses. So here we can actually see the sender name is actually where it states World Health Organization. But if you actually look at the email address, it's coming from a Selma at, I can't ever say that domain, but it's not coming from the World Health Organization, right? And they're utilizing this type of COVID example to be able to try to get users to click on that attachment to download those. So again, display name spoofing is the easiest way to be able to get users to be able to click on those types of links. The way that we can actually prevent this is with our email security solution of advanced phishing protection. As although the sending IP has a good reputation, this probably indicates a possible hijacked machine. But more importantly, this would have been dropped or blocked because the message would have been flagged as a display name imposter. Another example is where they actually are using malicious spam campaigns to get users to open a malicious attachment that contain the Emote rat, which also stands for the Remote Access Trojan. So a little bit about Emote. Emote is one of the most widely distributed and actively developed malware families in the crimeware landscape today due to the way its polymorphic capabilities and variety of ways of being delivered. So although it first purely began as a banking Trojan, this has evolved and will continue to evolve. The primary infection vector still maintains as a malicious email being sent as a widespread spam campaign, but how this is being used in this situation is that they're using a COVID-19 themed message, and what this will actually do is grant the attacker, once the actual user executes a malicious code, and therefore they will now have access to your particular device. Now, how we can actually prevent this is with our endpoints or even with our email security solution. Here's actually kind of a screenshot within our threat grid analysis where we've actually looked at the behavioral indicators, and we can immediately see that that particular document is actually related to Emote, and how is it actually being launched is through an Office document. So with that, we can prevent this type of particular event from users, even if they accidentally click on this, we can actually prevent that from actually being executed. So in order for us to begin thinking of how we can protect ourselves, we really need to understand how the kill chain works, right? So first would be the reconnaissance, where the actual attacker stalks its victim to learn everything they can learn about them, which then once they actually obtain that type of information and those types of vulnerabilities, this is when they'll start weaponizing those vulnerabilities of what they've learned about that victim. So it could be simple things as knowing about what they're passionate about, the charity work, hometown information, right? Anything that they can weaponize to say, hey, this is more likely for them to click on. With that, they are then going to work on how they're going to deliver this information. Now, it used to be mostly sent over emails, but the way that technology is evolving nowadays, we're actually seeing these types of attacks actually coming from text messages and even through social media messaging. Because once you actually look at that link, you could actually click on it, but then it's going to reroute you to a more malicious page. So then the other item is then exploitation, right? So then where they actually redirect you to that malicious page, where you can then input your own credentials, your username and password, et cetera. So then they're creating these types of fake portals for your users to actually click on and input their information. And then obviously, once they get that, they can monetize it, whether they're selling those credentials, whether they are doing any type of ransomware attack, things like that. Typically, you may actually see between the exploitation and the monetization, there's a step called installation and command and control. This is typically true for attacks with payloads. However, since now we're actually seeing a lot of these phishing attempts for user credentials, instead of getting a user to actually install some kind of code for a backdoor attack, what they're simply doing is just knocking on the front door and just seeing who's going to open the door for them. So how exactly can we protect ourselves? With our integrated phishing defense, the first way that I'd probably say is training the users, right? So even with the best solutions in place to protect your users, we can't complete this without touching on the human factor. So unless you're actually going to be looking over each one of your users' shoulders to evaluate whether or not they should actually click on that link or go to that page, our end users can either be our weakest or our strongest link, right? So I really like this quote because it states, people influence security more than technology or policy, and cyber criminals know how to exploit human behavior, right? So again, as I mentioned, our end users can either be our weakest or our strongest link. And what can we do about that is that we just need to train our users for them to recognize those types of attacks. So with our Cisco Security Awareness, you can actually send out unlimited phishing simulations to your end users to drive a more security mind within your organization, also establish accountability, and maintain compliance. The way that we do that is that we're not just pushing training materials to your end users. So outside of training them for them to know what kind of information needs to be blocked, obviously, what to actually look for. Actually look at the email addresses for those display name spoofing, know where exactly those are coming from, but actually then putting them into use. Because a lot of it is actually then with those phishing simulations to drill in that repetitiveness, to always be mindful of what they're clicking on and what they're accessing. There's also multiple languages that we can support too. So again, from a global aspect, you can also tailor these types of phishing simulations to any one of your users. So outside of touching on the human aspect, what can we actually do from an internal network perspective? How about we actually block those fraudulent emails? So as I mentioned earlier, email is still the #1 attack vector. And that's the best way for people to actually get into your network. You may think that no hacker may want to spend the time to actually try to spoof you or to get into your network, but account credentials can be purchased by hackers. What's scary is that 617 million accounts were stolen from hacked websites and sold to the dark web just this past February alone. With our advanced phishing protection, this is actually a self-learning technology as it builds a model of what good sending behavior looks like, as it looks for identity anomalies. So this includes machine learning, artificial intelligence, and other anomaly detection abilities. So that way we know what normal behaviors are regarding how that user sends their emails, the server that they're typically using, and how their message type acts. Let's take a look at a few examples of these. So really one is actually being able to block an account takeover. It's just as it sounds. This is where a malicious user will first try to take over a legitimate account, whether it be by stealing their password and username, again, with those like phishing credentials. But what they will actually do is then send information or do malicious deeds through that email address here. I don't know if anyone here is a Saints fan, but this is actually, I think he's one of the general managers for the Saints. But we actually did see this. This came from his account. Now, most solutions would actually pass this through because technically this is his email address. And why I would actually send that through is because if you notice down at the bottom, this SPF and DKIM and DMARC, this is actually what's typically used to detect any type of email spoofing. However, in this case, the email address here is legitimate. However, it's not the original user. So think of this as like identity theft, right? So I'm taking out your identity via your email to try to actually send out, whether it be a malicious link, downloads, anything like that, where it's asking for money or anything of that nature. So using our advanced phishing protection, this actually allows us to determine that this account was actually accessed via Lagos. Lagos is a city in Nigeria based off of where we saw based off of the X originating IP header. However, with our advanced phishing protection model, we know that actually that this is the user typically sends emails from a device located in the US. So with that, we actually flag this account and quarantine those emails because we see that this is potentially a compromised account. Another way that we can actually use our advanced phishing protection is actually blocking exact address spoofing. So just first glance at this, discover.com. This email address actually looks pretty legitimate, right? However, one thing that you may not know is that this @discover.com is not actually an email address that Discover themselves own. Typically, it's I think on their website they stated it's there's a few of them where it's like @email.discover.com or @services.discover.com. However, just by a quick glance, you're looking at @discover.com, you'd think that, oh, this is coming from them. If you do have a Discover card, you're probably going to log in and say, hey, see what's going on here. But as you can actually see with our advanced phishing protection, the server that actually sent this is a third-party service. So in other words, this address has been spoofed. So one way that we can actually also prevent this is outside of just the advanced phishing protection, but is also enabling these SPF and DMARC protection too. So another way that we can prevent fraudulent emails is through our Cisco domain protection. Protect your brand by knowing what emails are being sent on behalf of your domain. So this allows you to easily identify and eliminate illegitimate email messages and block malicious ones. I do apologize. I've got a dog barking in the background. But Again, the Cisco domain protection. So again, this is really going to help you identify, what exactly is your particular domain. So the way that this works is that we're using our DMARC standards to authorize and authenticate your email senders, protect your customers from cyber attacks, as well as safeguarding your brand's identity. So we're actually correlating where all of those servers where your emails are actually being sent from and making sure that those are legitimate and that they're passing over those DMARC and DKIM and SPF credentials. Next, outside of, again, protecting from the email perspective, we can do that with our Cisco email security as well as with the advanced phishing protection. But how do we actually protect those users from fraudulent links, whether they're being sent from text messages, SMs, or even from puny codes attacks, right? So if we actually kind of look at this, would you actually click on this one? Would you actually click on this link? How about this? And one last one, I promise. They all look very similar, right? So I would say probably the first one and maybe even the third one, if I was doing a first quick glance, I'd probably click on those if I received that, whether it be in an email or whether it be in a text message, right? I may actually click on those links just because from the domain in itself, it doesn't look bad. Now, the only thing is that when you actually look closer to it, you can see here there's actually an accent over the I, or obviously this is a little bit more noticeable, right, where the O has actually been replaced with a 0. But whenever you're actually looking at it from either your phone or your, obviously with our busy lives, we may not actually pay attention to these small types of details. So this is really where things like the puny code, which is a common hacking technique, what this actually does is actually a representation of Unicode with some ASCII aspects. So typically, this is actually written out with an XN -- with then some ASCII characters. That XN -- actually denotes that there's going to be some international characters coming up. So whether it be the accent over the I, whether it be actually a Roman numeral, whether it be, there's a couple of other ways that I've seen some of these written. But when you actually register a domain to your domain providers, you're actually registering them via kind of the puny code. But however, when you actually convert that into a text, right, so what we would actually typically type in, so unless you actually have like the Chinese keyboard or something like that, or some type of international keyboard, you may not know how to actually type those out. So when they actually convert those to a text, this is going to eliminate those types of puny codes. So it's not going to actually have those accent over the I's. Just to kind of show you a little bit of an example across different platforms and how they show up for the end users. Just kind of pointing out within Chrome and Firefox, these will actually translate the puny code where you can actually see the accent over the I, right? So that will actually show up. However, within, let's say, text message or even WhatsApp, those are things that you think that this looks like Rolex.com. However, this could actually have, like, if you notice a little E underneath there, those are little things that you would not actually notice within those, within your text messages or even through your emails. So again, just kind of noticing that puny code is one of the oldest ways and most effective ways of being able to have you click on malicious links. Now, how can we actually prevent this, right? This is actually where Cisco Umbrella can protect those types of requests. So Cisco Umbrella is that first line of defense to the web. Umbrella sees more than 200 billion requests daily and provides more than just phishing protection. So it also looks at malware, command and control callbacks, even crypto mining, just to name a few. It's monitoring all ports and protocols, so it's not just looking at port 80 and 443. So this allows us to fully capture all outbound requests to the internet. Umbrella also protects your users both on and off network, even when they're not on VPN. One of the biggest benefits is also Umbrella can integrate with your existing investment. So whether it be a Cisco product, Umbrella not only acts as just your DNS resolvers, you can also have a client that you can install on those end devices. So that way then, even if they're working from home, as many users are doing now, or if they, when we do actually hopefully start going back to offices and other locations, they can also still protect them from there as well. But the easiest way for you to be able to set up Umbrella, as it shows here, it acts as your DNS resolver. So the configuration would just be change your DNS forwarders to point to the two Umbrella IP addresses. Now, Umbrella also receives information that's being fed by that same Talos team that I mentioned earlier. So as well as having our own research team that's looking at the data, as well as building up advanced techniques to better identify patterns of new ways that attackers are leaving behind, and building statistical models and machine learning to automatically score and classify the data even before those domains are even used for attacks. So this is the best way for us to be able to capture that zero-day attack, whether or not they're just sitting on those domains or, before they're actually used for malicious deeds. So as a recap, we covered being able to protect their email with their email security solution. We've also covered now the internet, right? Being able to utilize Cisco Umbrella. Now, the last thing, as I mentioned, what can we utilize to cover our endpoints? This is really where our AMP for Endpoint solution, which is our AV that acts as Endpoint Protection platform. Outside of that, it can also have advanced detection or remediation capabilities. So this gives you features such as retrospective capabilities of being able to find patient zero of a malicious file. We can also do endpoint isolation. We can also sandbox those files. And then we can also proactively do threat hunting with our orbital feature. There's many other features that we can have in there, but those are just to name a few. We're really then taking endpoint AV protection to the next level. So as you notice, you probably have heard that we say AMP everywhere motto. This is where you can get AMP with many of our other solutions. So whether it be with our email, whether it be with our on-prem web solution, this is really where we're allowing our AMP engines as well as the information that's being fed by our Talos team to allow us to be more proactive than reactive. Another way that we can block malware installation on those endpoints is to ensure that those accounts are protected by multi-factor authentication with Duo. This is really then assuring that the user that's trying to access their documentation is actually who they say they are, and that they were actually asking to actually access that account. As you guys know, passwords are often being breached, right? So again, if they put in their username and credentials, if that gets leaked out, they at least still have the multi-factor authentication, because the idea of them actually also having their phone stolen as well as their password stolen is probably a little bit harder for them to do, right? A lot of times also passwords, as strong as you may think they are, unless you're actually utilizing those self-generators, which then I would never remember those, they're probably going to have something to do with, something that you would remember. So whether it be a hometown, whether it be, where did you first live? What was your school mascot? What's the name of your first pet? Right? Those are typically passwords that people utilize as part of their password to log into things. So again, even though we may think that our password is strong enough, it's never strong enough. So this is where multi-factor authentication does also provide that additional layer. So now really kind of to tie it together, this is really where we have the intel of all of our security solutions automatically shared to one another. But in the beginning, I stated, with your security solution is only as good as the intel it shares, which we discussed with our Talos backend supporting the rest of our products. Now to actually kind of dive into how can we actually help your teams decipher in an understandable manner, right? So I kind of flipped through this a little too quick earlier, but this is really where our Cisco Threat Response ties all of this together. First off, this is a free tool whenever you purchase anything that I mentioned above earlier. So it was like Cisco Umbrella, and for endpoints, our email security solution. If you're interested in any of those, if you have any of those right now, you actually do have the capabilities of logging into Cisco Threat Response. Again, this is free. I know anything free given from Cisco, right? It's too good to be true. But the reason why we do this is because what exactly CTR is giving you is that single pane of glass to be able to tie all of your security solutions into a single dashboard for threat hunting. So CTR really helps you respond to incidents faster, because we all know out there's not a silver bullet that's going to prevent all attacks. Best thing we can do is shrink that attack surface, but it also shorten that impact time of knowing exactly who exactly was patient zero, how did they get in, and then as well as remediate it. So with CTR, we're actually giving our team back time, expertise about the event, as well as evidence of where it's gone within your network, and then also allowing you to quickly remediate that. So with that, I'm going to jump into the dashboard really quick of Cisco Threat Response. And hopefully it did not time out on me. I prayed extra hard on the demo gods today to make sure that everything will work great. So This year, let's kind of utilize the example, right? So let's say upper management comes to you and says, hey, there is a new threat out there. Are we protected, right? What you can easily do is actually go into the Cisco Talos blog, and what you can actually find is search for this and actually see exactly what exactly that event was about. So you can actually see, how exactly did that threat work? How exactly does that affect your endpoints? But also the great thing about our Talos blog page is that down at the bottom, it will have information such as our indications of compromises. So it will have things like those malicious hashes, as well as any of those domains that are associated with it. So it kind of gives you a lot of that great information. Now, what I can do when I get into Cisco Threat Response, I can actually copy and paste this into there. Or the other option, and what I typically recommend, is actually downloading our casebook. This is a free plugin. And what this is actually doing is any type of screen scan. This works on any web page. So if you guys are used to using Cisco Talos blog, that's great. If maybe you're used to utilizing another SIM article or any other articles out there where they also show these types of indications of compromises, you can also utilize this casebook. What you can then do is, maybe I want to investigate on those that are malicious as well as unknown. If it's clean, that's cool. Don't really need to investigate that a little bit further. But what we can actually do is then click on that, click on investigate. I did also obviously wait for it to load up. I did kind of have that pulled up here. But what you can actually see is, again, that took that same information, went ahead and copy and paste that in. But without actually looking at anything else on this page, just down up at the top here, I can already see that I've had 5 targets. So answering the question, has this been in my network? Yes, it has been. I can now dictate which devices has seen this particular threat or anything associated to this threat. I can see that we had an endpoint device. So again, going back to our AMP for endpoints, I can see that this Alexa Windows 10 device was actually seen associated to that particular threat. What I can actually do here without actually pivoting into that dashboard, I can immediately do an endpoint isolation. What an endpoint isolation does is actually manually takes that device and takes it out of your network without you going and hunting down where that device is and actually turning it off or trying to remove it, right? So with endpoint isolation, this will automatically kind of take that out of your network. And the only thing that this device can communicate to is our AMP cloud, as well as if you were to input any type of IP addresses on that allowed list. But the only thing it communicates to is AMP cloud. So then that allows you to kind of still dive deeper into that particular device, see what those executables are, maybe look at the device trajectory again, get more information. But in terms of, all right, we see that this was infected, let's go ahead and take action up. We're going to isolate this so it can't infect the rest of my network. The other thing that we can also see here is the domain that's associated, right? Again, immediately with Umbrella, I can also just click on that dropdown and automatically put that onto a block list, right? We want to make sure that this is completely out. No other users can go to this. I just want to make sure that this is blocked, right? So you can actually put that onto a block list. If I want to know more information about that particular domain, I can actually investigate that with our Investigate console. But again, making sure that, we're taking actions immediately. All of this is done within the CTR dashboard. You don't have to actually copy and paste this and then go into the Umbrella dashboard and put that domain onto a block list. Or the same thing with that's hunting down that endpoint device and making sure that that is actually isolated. Things that you can also do is that we see that there's a malicious hash file too. I can immediately here put that also on a block list with our AMP for endpoints. So all of this is done within the CTR dashboard without you having to pivot into 3 different consoles to be able to say, all right, we saw this. I got to make sure that it's being blocked or that we actually are blocking this, and then also hunting down which devices this has seen. We can already answer those questions, automatically take action on it, and let you know who that patient 0 is. So again, with CTR, this is really giving you that first single pane of glass. I know it's a very overused term, but it really is. It's giving you that single view with all of your Cisco security solutions to be able to kind of state where did this go if there's anything that was associated with it. Down at the bottom here, it also gives you great information about, again, what exactly are those domains doing? What exactly is that hash doing? Why did we deem this malicious? Right? And how exactly does that work? So we can see that this particular, Office360.com, we actually deem that as malicious through Umbrella. Also, our Talos team also deemed that as malicious. So again, kind of giving you some more information there. You can click through it. Again, they'll kind of tell you a little bit more information if you want to kind of see what that looked like within our Threat Grid Sandbox solution. You can also see that type of analysis and see how that would actually function on a particular device. So again, really great information. But again, giving you that time back for your end users, it's giving them expertise about the event as well as evidence of where it's gone within your network and also being able to quickly remediate it. So in the beginning, I asked how much time that would take for you to be able to do that with your team now with your current solutions. As you can see with CTR, I'm able to kind of take actions within, less than 5 minutes, right? So being able to search fairly quickly. So as I mentioned before, CTR is a free product. So whenever you do purchase things like our AMP for endpoints or Threat Grid or Cisco Umbrella email security, even if you just have our next generation firewalls, you do automatically get Cisco Threat Response. All you have to do is there's modules that you just need to hook into, and that's how we actually pull and integrate all that information together. If you really liked CTR, and obviously we can always go into a more deeper demo into CTR if you guys want to be able to see that, just let myself or the DataVox team know. We can always set up another time. But SecureX is a platform that's coming to be launched this summer as an enhancement to CTR, as this integrates with not just Cisco's security portfolio, but as well as the customer's infrastructure. So this gives you more of a consistent experience that unifies visibility, enables automation, and as well as strengthening your security across your network, your endpoint, cloud, and application. So this is going to give end users a cross-team collaboration. So there's more to come there. So really, as kind of a quick recap in the 30, 45 minutes or so of how we can actually protect ourselves from phishing attempts. Really, again, through the web with our Cisco Umbrella, being able to prevent, users from being able to click on malicious links and being able to block those. Email, utilizing our Cisco email security solution and our advanced phishing protection, as email is still that #1 attack vector. And then as well as our endpoints, right, utilizing Cisco AMP, our Threat Grid Sandbox solution, and then our Multifactor Authentication with Duo. So as I promised, here is the QR code as well as the link. You will need to fill out the survey in order for us to send you the gift card. These will actually be sent out within 24 hours. It will be sent to the email address provided, so just make sure that you do input the right email address there. But again, thank you guys so much for attending. Stay safe out there. Also, let us know if there's anything that we can assist with during this time.
I appreciate that. This is Greg Smith. We're going to go through a little bit of Q&A. There were a few really good questions that were submitted through the course of the event. Wanted to discuss those. So first question is, what level of Cisco Umbrella would be needed for full proxy capability?
So full proxy capability, we do have our SIG Essentials package. That's probably going to be the one that you'll need if you want to be able to do full proxy capabilities.
Okay. Next question is, when is SecureX going to be released?
That's a great question. We're deeming the summertime. I've heard of June and July for the first initial release. It would probably be like more mid-June-ish. To be honest, there's been a lot of timelines that have been getting pushed back due to COVID-19. So we're kind of hoping within June and July for that to be released out.
Okay. Next question, for Duo multi-factor authentication, besides push notification, what other forms of verification does it support?
Yep. So you can actually have Duo either call you. You can also, outside of just doing the push notification, you can also insert a passcode. And then there's also, depending on, I have seen with Chrome, as well as if you do have like a Mac, there is a way for you to be able to do the fingerprint scan too. That one only works on certain devices. But really from the application standpoint, you can either do the push code, you can either have it call you, or you can enter the passcode.
It also supports, this is Chris DeWitt from Duo, also supports YubiKeys, biometric functions, as well as hardware tokens if so desired.
Okay, perfect. Next question, does Cisco Umbrella use DNSSEC and what else is it checking for?
Yeah. So Cisco Umbrella is actually utilizing DNS crypt for encrypting the traffic going from the device to the Umbrella servers in itself. We are actually working on DNSSEC right now. That one's a little bit further on down the road, but in terms of the actual encryption, we're utilizing DNS crypt.
Okay. Next question, do the solutions discussed require on-site infrastructure?
So yes and no, right? Most of them are all cloud-based, right? So with Umbrella, there's no equipment that you need to have on-prem, and for endpoints, I mean, there is a connector that you do need to install on those devices. However, there are options for on-prem. However, we do typically deploy those as a cloud-based item. Same thing with our email security solution, right? We do have a cloud-based email security solution. However, if you do prefer to have an on-prem equipment, we do also have that capability too. So it just kind of depends on how you want to be able to deploy it, but it's not mandatory for you to have prem equipment.
Okay. Next question. How are these technologies licensed?
Yep. So with Umbrella, it's actually licensed what we call full-time employees. So typically, if you got 100 employees, we're going to license them based off of the number of employees, just because they may actually have multiple devices, right? For endpoints, those are going to be licensed based off of devices. So if you have, 100 laptops, maybe a couple servers, right? We do have to license those based off of devices because it's based off of the number of connectors that are actually going to be deployed. With the email security, that is actually based off of the number of mailboxes that you have. Typically, that's more kind of in alignment of the number of employees as well. Typically, it's a one-to-one, but if you do have a few extra, seeing kind of more of a buffer space for those. Duo in itself, I think, Chris, I don't know if you can kind of answer that one.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to. Since I'm here, I can help. Chris DeWitt again. So Duo is licensed purely by users. So regardless of how many applications the client has, you can protect an unlimited number of applications. It just Duo is simply licensed per user.
Perfect. And this one may have been partly addressed before, but we'll ask it. The last question that I see here is, how do these solutions help me protect off-network users? So we've got so many at-home workers these days. How do these solutions help with that?
Yeah, so definitely with Umbrella, as I mentioned earlier, there is a client that you can deploy out to be able to protect those devices. So what it does is actually redirect any type of external requests through that client in itself, which will then go to Umbrella. And for endpoints, obviously there is a connector that also scans and monitors the files that are going to and from that particular device. Email, obviously, if you go the cloud-based option, those are all that email traffic is going to be sent through the CES piece of it. So there's many different ways that we can protect our users when they're going both on and off network.
Okay. And one last question came in here. We currently use the Windows Authenticator for Office 365. What would be unique about the Duo Authenticator?
The Duo Authenticator, so I guess when we're looking at that, if we're talking Microsoft MFA, I guess kind of there's a few different arguments you can look at there. Typically, Microsoft kind of considers that as a freebie giveaway, so it's not really a focused product for them. Duo, we're dedicated around MFA solutions as well as that, as far as that protection around the application. So when we're kind of doing a contrast and compare against Microsoft and Duo, where we kind of focus on, and they're a very close partner with us, so there's never going to be a bash session with Duo versus Microsoft from us. The key within that situation is we protect things outside of the Microsoft solution package, which Microsoft struggles with. They do really well with Microsoft products, but when you start mixing in other vendors and other solutions, either in the cloud or on-prem, we can do all of those simultaneously, where they and many other of our competitors tend to struggle.
Yeah, we have that in our own environment. So, something that's unique is like you said, having a single authenticator for more than one application. So as you look to secure the environment, you're going to ideally want to turn on multi-factor authentication for all of your applications and for access to your network, VPN, and those types of things, and to be able to have a single authentication app that the users get familiar with and use and is easy to use and provides that security regardless of the application is really key.
And I'll probably add one more. I was going to add one more thing on the Duo subject. So, and then also when we're talking kind of Microsoft, or I guess it kind of extends past Office 365, we provide the device health insight, where you would actually have to buy the full MDM suite from Intune in order to provide kind of that visibility as to whether the Mac or the Windows or iOS or Android are actually up to date and have all the security features enabled or not. We can do that without an MDM.
Okay. There's one other question here, a little bit technical in nature. Question is, wouldn't the user access flow with Umbrella provide the same data using NBAR and NetFlow?
Yeah, so that's a little bit different for NBAR and NetFlow data. So Umbrella, because what we're doing is we're actually looking at external DNS requests. So typically anything that you're doing nowadays is actually making a web request. NBAR is also looking at more internal information, right? So with the way that Umbrella is doing it is actually acting as your DNS resolvers in theory, but then what we can do is actually apply policies to be able to block things such as like those malicious domains, as well as doing content filtering, etc. So a little bit of background noise there, but I don't know if that kind of directly answers that question.
I think that's all of them. I appreciate everybody participating today, and lots of great questions. Any additional questions that you have or feedback that you need, certainly feel free to reach out to the DataVox team and the Cisco team, and we'll certainly circle back. Obviously, this was a very high level on a number of the security devices that we and solutions that we think are most relevant given our situation that we're in, but certainly open to doing a deeper dive, more technical dive with anybody to dig a little bit deeper. There were a couple of questions related to some of the press around Cisco's new SecureX platform, and we addressed those at a very high level. We're also trying to organize a future webinar on that topic because it's got the market pretty excited. So with that, I think we're ready to close.
So Greg, it's Vlad on the Cisco side. We had one last question come in that I think is quick and easy to answer. So question is also, can you integrate Umbrella into Cisco AnyConnect? I think that's a pretty obvious answer for our team to kind of answer. That's a yes, and I think it's the preferred method. But yeah, if there's anything else you want to shed light on, Lundy, I think the last thing I wanted to do was close out with making sure something was filled out with regards to the gift cards being sent out. So anything else you want to add, Lundy?
Yeah, so really, yes. In short, yes, the Umbrella can't integrate with the AnyConnect VPN module. What that does is just it'll show up as a separate security module. So really, even when you're not on VPN, that security module will come into play. So what you can do is when you're on a full VPN tunnel, for that security module to take a quote-unquote step back. But then the second you get off VPN, that security module is going to kick back in and then make sure that all of your traffic is still going through Umbrella and being secured.
Awesome. And Greg, one last thing, we want to make sure all attendees, as they're filling out their survey, we added a question for ensuring that they put in that box. DataVox was the partner of choice that kind of led this today. So just want to make sure everyone fills that out moving forward through that survey. So appreciate you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. There actually was a question that came in related to getting a copy of the presentation. So we can certainly do that. We'll also be posting the recording of the session, to our website. So you'll have that along with not only the presentation, but Lundy's great delivery of the presentation. But if you'd actually like the file itself so that you can share it yourself, certainly we can do that for you as well. Jessica?
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you guys. And thank you all for joining today's webinar. And as Greg stated, as a reminder, the recording link for today's session will be emailed to all attendees 24 to 48 hours post-event and available on our webinar page. If you did enjoy today's session and would like to hear more, we do offer new webinars weekly. Please check the DataVox website for more information on upcoming sessions. And as always, we would love to hear your feedback on our events. Once this webinar has ended, you will be redirected to a survey page. This is a separate survey from Cisco's wonderful offer. But if you could please take a moment to complete the survey before closing out your browser, we would greatly appreciate it. That concludes our session for today. Thank you again to Cisco and Lindy for a great presentation, and thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.